and welcome. Hello and welcome. If you're here, this is the kickoff. Chris should be joining in the room here shortly. We've got a hopefully an excellent show lined up for you guys today. Lots of topics to break down. A new apology from Yoshi-P. This seems to be the expansion of apologies, so we're going to be talking about that.
There is.
Added Chris here to the room. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good call on the new letter because I hadn't seen that yet. So
I just ran a quick 2 minutes so that anybody in the chat doesn't get ads.
Excellent. Woohoo! All right. Chris is talking about next week's plan, shouting it out. And then I didn't see the rest of it as my app here is loading up. Boop 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 boop. Boom. Perfect. Awesome. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Okay. Typing to anybody still in ads. But basically, we're going to be putting pauses between these segments so that we can run ads, so that Twitch gets what they need to run their platform, but we don't interrupt a discussion at a point that somebody either put a question in chat and we kind of worked it into a conversation and they miss it, or we're just saying something that they're interested in, because occasionally we do that, and then they miss that, because that kind of sucks.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have ever had this, but on my phone, back when they first added turn-by-turn directions, it used to be that like podcasts would show up as like a music flag internally, and they didn't develop a like separate tag. So then when your turn-by-turn came up, some dev had to decide, is it better to pause the song and start it back up or not pause the song? And they made a universal decision. Now for music, many times people in the car are singing along. Right. Yeah. And you're singing along. And so if they cut it and say, turn left here, we all just come back in on the chorus. And so actually it's really nice and it's immersive to have the song keep going. So there is an argument for that.
Yeah.
However, you swap that music track out for a podcast track, and now it's just cutting words.
Oh, dude, it drives me nuts.
And that's insane, right? And so so it's the same idea, right? Is an interruption okay? And it's contextual. In a YouTube video, absolutely, because it pauses it, satisfies the platform, and comes right back where it left off, which is what you want. And if you're listening to like a live event or a music channel on Twitch, as long as there's not a big moment, interrupt it, because I want to be on the current moment. But if you're watching a podcast or a discussion post, something like Critical Role, I don't care if I'm 10 minutes behind the public. What I don't want is to miss anything.
Yeah.
So
we're
going to fix it by just inserting mid-rolls intentionally so that we know that it is paused accordingly.
And shout out and thanks to David G dropping a $5 super chat saying, appreciate you guys. Well, thank you. We appreciate you too. Thank you so much for the super chat. And also welcome in everybody. Thanks also for the likes. That's a great way of sharing out these live shows. This has been a trial run week as we've tried to do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, kind of bringing you guys kind of MMO news, analysis, breakdown, discussion in a live format, and then splitting those up into like individual video segments that roll out as well. So if you guys have feedback, frequency, topics, we'd love to hear any and all, so that we can try and build out like this. I think I've been having a lot of fun, Chris. So we obviously don't know yet what ultimate time makes the most sense. Sometimes my schedule can get like pretty busy. So that's what we're shooting for. This will be the first week where we actually have achieved said goal of that. This is the Friday show. Maybe it'll be more relaxed. Maybe we'll, I don't know. We got our 3 topics, but for today itself, we're going to talk about, I'm assuming probably later in the show itself. We haven't put our order yet together. So Chris, if you have an idea of what you want, Yoshi put out a new letter itself. We'll talk about that. And then we're also going to talk about Square-Enix has been like on this game Blitz. So for me personally, I'm excited about Octopath Traveler 2, but it's also not coming to every platform. I thought it was just coming to Switch, but they're doing some things. So we got some stuff to talk about there as well. If you guys are watching over on YouTube, thank you. We also got it pinned for the Twitch link. If you are following over on Twitch, great. Also have the link over here as well, because I can highlight y'all's comments and things like that over from the YouTube side, which is really nice. And Chris, I don't know if you've been paying attention, but YouTube's actually starting to preview some new changes coming this fall, which some of the requests that we've had for a long time are going to be pretty substantial. I just turned on, anybody can rate us over on the YouTube side of things. That's a big one. It was like, hey, do you want to do like all kinds of crazy work just so that you can kind of try to build out a rating kind of community on the YouTube side? Now that seems to be simplified. So that's now turned on. Also, they're going to be updating kind of the channel pages in a way that actually reflects what we've been wanting in terms of separation and division of content. So shorts are going to be shorts. They're not considered uploads. Live streams aren't going to be considered uploads. They're going to be in a live stream. And if you don't do live streaming, then your channel page is going to be kind of a little bit more clean. So it's not going to be like, if you don't have any playlists, it's not going to show that, it's not going to act like you got playlists and show a tab like that. So I was like, all right, we're making progress. If they could just do that on the back end, that'd be great. Because the thing that annoys me more than anything is seeing like shorts uploaded alongside with like the video upload. So it's crazy. Poor Chris, cool. Not even capitalized. Well, we have to set some kind of goal in order for, and it's gotta be ridiculous, because like I know a lot of people, I included, I'm just like, I'm with y'all. Like we're all in this, like, what's Chris doing with his lowercase c? But it's something that you, it's a preference that you have. But we have to set some kind of goal, chat. So think of something ridiculous, and we'll see if we can actually get him to capitalize his C for us. Anyway, that's kind of the rundown, kind of the morning as we let people get in here. Go ahead, Chris.
Not a very good typist, and so when I type fast, I tend to miss capitals and some commas and things like that. And that comes from like A, I'm not good at typing, and B, I'm not a good writer. And so when you put those together, there tends to be things missed. And autocorrect has done nothing but encourage that behavior. And so that means that when I do capitalize something, it's very intentional. It's usually to highlight a point. And actually, I don't always capitalize correctly. Sometimes I'm highlighting a pun or something I'm putting in there. So my goal is to draw your attention, because I think something about it, the sentence is important. And I don't think my name in this context is important. Like, it is my name if they're like, who's the guy on the left? But like, we did 2 podcasts yesterday where I had a great time, and I had neither of our names up. It was me and Mo Raines, and it was me and Rin. And I think the topic was what was important.
Yeah. How'd those go? Where are you putting those? And this going on?
Well, I was trying to edit a big, massive post, and I'd started as an event that started earlier this week, and Yoshi-P wrote a letter about it this morning. So like, I don't know yet. Like I'm trying to edit this down, and Yoshi-P's like, you're not done. We're not done editing this.
The story continues on. I haven't read it yet, so generally I'm betting it's another apology, and that's going to be something that I bring up as well, because it seems like that's what Endwalker is.
I don't mean to jump into the future here, but hold on. Just a quick glance. We'll count the word regret. It's 2, 3, 4. I think I see at least 4 apologies. I think I see at least 4 apologies.
All right. Well,
so there's at least 4 sorries. So yes, you've nailed that.
Well, beyond that, I'm saying, like, you know, we'll talk about it in that section. So in terms of order of operations for the 3 topics, do you have a preference on?
I do not.
Okay. Well, I need some direction.
I would say let's start with the Zepla thing.
Okay.
Let's talk about Octopath Traveler, and let's end on this letter.
All right. That sounds good to me. Perfect. Excellent. All right, guys. As we do these shows, we're going to take a kind of a little mini stretch break in between, in order to ensure that those of you watching over on Twitch do not get mid cut off from an ad roll. Now, obviously, for the Prime subs and all the support that you guys provide us, you'd be perfectly fine. But generally speaking, Twitch is handling the ad runs. YouTube decides to bark at me and say I should run an ad. And I'm just like, that's what Twitch was doing a couple of months ago. So I do wonder if we're going to see live streaming become more in sync in terms of like how, I guess, they're funded on the company side. But that's going to be interesting to see in the long run. So just know that's going to be kind of the plan. We did this last Wednesday, and honestly, from an editor perspective, I adored it. Like, it was so easy to kind of find the breaks, push them together, build out the MP3, and put the podcast out. Note that these are also running on our podcast channel, but they're trailing roughly about like 6 days. So right now it's kind of neat. Like, we do the live show Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then I have the audios running Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday, kind of in this kind of like, you kind of have like one thing going here and then the other thing kind of playing catch up. So for those of you who are subscribed to the audio, if you're not, you can also go subscribe. I got the links in the description. We keep getting asked for our stats, so I have no idea if our podcast stats are good or not. But we just crossed over 40,000 downloads of the podcast. So thank you guys so much for that.
Podcasting is a weird space. Podcasting is like, Brian hires me to be his physical trainer. And I'm like, Brian, I want to note that where you're at from a physical fitness standpoint is that you have 83,000 units of Pazoosh, and you're currently outputting about 62 Pazazes. And then just walks out of the room. And you're like, I don't, like, is that something I need to work on? Am I doing great? Like, I don't. Like,
and then the next week is like,
and, like, can you tell me
I told
stats?
you need to get better.
Can you tell me somebody else's? Like,
Yeah.
I will tell you mine, and you will tell me literally anybody
else's. Yeah.
Like what? This is not helpful.
And Frosty Corner with the 5 spot saying, thanks guys for being awesome. Thank you, Frosties, for that epic super chat as well. Note that, like, we'll try to answer questions and any super chats and support that comes in. We'll either try to address those like at the break, unless for some reason it's something that really is pertaining to what we're talking about. So just note that we'll make sure that we give you guys plenty of thank yous and plenty of recognition for that awesome support. If you're over here on the YouTube side, before we jump into it, make sure you hit that like button. If people come in, just if y'all could remind them to smash that button, because that's a great way. Because YouTube's live discovery is weird. Like, these videos will perform, these live streams perform great in the as a VOD, because I think YouTube understands what that is. But discovery, like, I've even heard some of the bigger guys, like, I don't know how to find me on YouTube.
YouTuber and a viewer be doing the same thing at the same time?
I know.
I'm not sure.
What's happening? Anyway, there's always hope. YouTube always kind of likes to tease things out, and then 5 years later decides to deliver them. So, all right, we've got our lineup. We got our set. So, Chris, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go, guys. Hello and welcome to the Crystal Core Radio Podcast. Brian and Chris here for Work to Game, bringing you guys 3 big topics, rounding out this week in review. Zepla got banned off of Twitch. I think that's going to be massively important for us to talk about, both as content creators, but also as a 14 community, what we can do to help support each and every one of us. Also, to hopefully not let these kind of things happen. So there's a discussion we're going to be opening up the show with on that. Then we're going to talk about some of the really cool games that Square-Enix has been really announcing. Honestly, for me, Octopath Traveler 2, top of the list, showing it off, dropping it from the Nintendo event. But guess what? Not a Nintendo exclusive like the first one was for so long. So that has me personally excited. In fact, we also see Triangle Strategy coming its way to Steam. So lots of good moving parts. I'm generally curious to see what, like, if anything stands out to Chris, the RPG nerd in me. Is really excited for what we're gonna. So we're gonna talk about that in kind of the mid part of the show, and at the end of the show today, we're gonna be talking about Yoshi-P's latest apology letter, in which he's going to be breaking down part of the raid. This has been an ongoing conversation within the community all week. Originally, we were looking at titling this like Final Fantasy 14 Add-on Drama Part 2. A lot of this kind of kicks off with that. They actually found the person using the third-party tools, and it really both is a interesting story and also kind of a scary one, when it's like they will find you. There are logs there, like, but there's probably a massive amount of work that has to go into kind of tracking down kind of the source of all this. So at the end of the day, lots of interesting developments, but we want to spend some time going over the Yoshi-P letter for you guys today. If you are new to the content we make here, if you're new to this MP3, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for being here on the live show. Thanks for being over here on Twitch. We really appreciate each and every one of you. And also thank you to Mr. Worldwide Warrior Light, dropping a 20 spot of support here on YouTube, helping fund the shows and the cost of just the MP3s alone. It's so funny. YouTube will literally let you host endless hours of video for free. And then we have a MP3 podcast, and they're like, yeah, it's going to be $500 a year to run the MP3. So thank you guys so much for that support. It does help take It does make a lot of that much easier. Chris, yesterday you were live, and I actually saw this happen on Twitter, and so I kind of just jumped into chat because I was like, this is unreal. Zepla got banned for 1 hour and 8 minutes from Twitch. The real cost of all this, though, right, is that she went from 240,000 down to 78, and then when I actually went to look at her page, it went back up to 120. I don't know if that's been crawling itself back up. Oh yeah, I'm sure that it's been coming its way back, but is she back to where she was, or
I have not checked her this morning, but
okay.
What it looks like is happening is anytime anybody refreshes the page on Twitch or logs into Twitch for the day, it goes ahead and tosses those people on there. That does mean anybody who's never coming back to Twitch is no longer in her number, but she's at 246 again right now.
Okay, good. That was actually one of the biggest concerns that I know that she expressed, because all of a sudden,
absolutely,
right. Because also when we look at when people look at, you know, sponsorships and partnerships and all of those things, it's always interesting because on YouTube, people look at the subscriber number and YouTubers can be like, that doesn't necessarily mean a good thing or a bad thing. It just means, you know, go ahead.
My experience as I've pursued more Twitch sponsorships and as I've done more with sponsors is what they're looking for is concurrence. And then how many people within your stream are active. They are aware of this kind of lurker concept. So they are looking at concurrence, and they are looking at how many people can click a link or how many people will make a purchase. And those are kind of the three metrics that I have seen determine what sponsorship opportunities I have. And I've been using it to run additional streams beyond my standard schedule. Because it's kind of like paid overtime, right? And so like you guys support us, and so I put out an amount of content throughout the week that is a full-time job. And then you know, since times have been a little tight this year because ad revenue and things are doing weird things, there's been some great sponsors that have been fun to work with, and it's been a great excuse to make extra time to do the things I wouldn't have normally gotten to, running streams, working on spreadsheets, all sorts of nerdy stuff. So that's been really fun. But as I've worked on that, I will say concurrence has been the single most valuable number. If Brian and I truly cared about that, we would be more disciplined about what we put on our Twitch channel, because that means anytime one of us goes live late at night and plays a game that's not Final Fantasy at all, it lowers your average concurrence for the month. So we're not super disciplined on it, but I'm aware of at least what metric they're looking at. But with followers, like, the number itself doesn't mean anything. That's just the number of feeds you'd show up in the left. It's got bots in it. We know that your real number is something smaller than that. Everybody's number is something smaller than whatever number it says. And I will tell you, like I talked about this on stream yesterday, like our follower number, while we would celebrate it hitting milestones because it's the number we have, it's not actually the number that makes me do what I do. It's not actually the number that helps reconvince me of pride in my work. Those numbers are how many people are hanging out. Those numbers are those moments of, hey, I've been lurking for a long time, but I just want to say I appreciate something. Those numbers are the numbers of you that I get to know every single week. And some of you are here all the time, and I get to know your struggles, and I get to know your joys, and I'm aware of what's going on in your life, and you're telling me what's going on with your dog. And like, those are the things that make streaming fun, not the number of people who've hit the follow button. That number really doesn't do anything. If a million people tomorrow watched some news article about Twitch and randomly found only our channel and all hit follow and that jumped to 1 million, it wouldn't do anything. It doesn't make us money. It doesn't help it open any doors. It doesn't lead to a more fun stream. It's just a number. So I wasn't worried about her number dropping on that case. What I was worried is, what if even one person that likes watching Zepla, they watch a lot of other people and they're like, gosh, I'm drawing a blank on her name, and she's not in that feed on the left.
Right.
If even one person who would actively get joy in their life from watching Zepla has her removed as a follow, which Twitch does remove follows from time to time. I see people, I'm like, I know
YouTube does. Them. YouTube does for that, for the follows, you know, the subs, but the follows, yeah.
So if even one person is a result of this, that's BS. Because the cause for her ban was that she was banned for impersonating Zepla. So the whole thing was because she was banned for impersonating herself.
And this is something she's been fighting. And so one of the things that it's interesting when it comes to impersonation, just as kind of a thought experiment, I literally over on Ginger World had somebody being Ginger World trying to get people to do this thing. And got to go report him for impersonation. So it is existing on all platforms. But this is something that Zepla, especially with her size and her success, has been fighting against for a long time actively. And then to be caught up by this, like, to me, like when I was like, if I was in a like, hey, let's talk about getting into content creation. Okay, at this phase, you need to be thinking about this. When you grow to this size, you need to be thinking about this. And that's really where, like, seeing this, I'm glad it got rectified, but that still probably had to be an hour and 8 minutes of real stress.
Absolute stress.
One of the things that, like, you know, I even talked about lightly in my videos, that one of the things that I feel that is the most true, because of how Twitch operates and how it locks you in from any, like, we get the ability because we actually are more than one person, but Zepla doesn't get the ability to stream to YouTube at the same time or Facebook. What's happening right now is Ninja's doing that, and I do wonder if that will lead to a lawsuit, if that is the intention down the road, to be able to sit here and say, hey, he's actually growing faster and having a benefit, and he can afford to do something like that because of his size and the paydays he's gotten. Namely, because when you go look at his Twitch numbers, they're much, much higher. We see that when we do things like that, y'all go over and check out Twitch, and the numbers are much, much higher. And I think in that sense, that getting locked down, getting banned, getting what happened to Zepla, like, really, I hope tells you don't be reliant on any one platform, because their bots, their AI, they're going to fail you. And they'll find a reason, you know, and thank goodness she's got a community and a size that she's able to bring this to light. But the other side of it is, like, this in and of itself is like, I wouldn't ever want to sit here and be tied into one platform for my source of income. And she's had a hell of a year. We're talking the war of Ukraine. We're talking, like, this is in and of itself is just like, that sucks.
The stress of it is that she tried to go live and was banned.
Yeah.
And then saw her follower count was down. Now, the news, and I would like to keep restating this throughout this, just in case anybody misses it. She did not lose followers. She is back up to 246K right now. It was jumping up literally. When I saw her yesterday, she had 1,500 people watching her. She was at 120K after I was told she was at 80. And when I pulled up the page and then we talked about it for a bit, and I said, I wonder if it's going back up rapidly. And somebody said, it says I'm not following her. And then I just refreshed your page, and now it says I am following her. I said, okay. So then people were like, oh, I'm going to refresh my page. I'm going to refresh my page. So then as people refresh their page, well, I refreshed her page. It went up by 10,000.
Yeah.
She had 1,500 people watching her. That means if none of them were following her, now they're all following her 10 times. So, like, it was rapid in how fast it came back.
That's the question. News are they backing it up? No.
And now that's out there. And I'm going to keep stating that because I think, like, the issue of her getting banned is bad, and is bad on its own. It is incredibly infuriating. But this whole she got purged of followers, that part actually risks us taking away from talking about the act of getting banned for impersonation, because now we're focused on this thing they took away from her when they didn't. And so then what happens is then somebody corrects that, and it makes the whole argument look like, well, do you even have all the facts? And it starts to devalue everything that really is still wrong here. It is still wrong that she got banned in the first place. It is still wrong that she had to go through that whole process of trying to go live. And she uses Streamlabs OBS, and it's like, can't connect to the channel. And she's like, what is this? And she has a screen cap of the error. It's a weird error. And it doesn't tell you a whole lot. It's not like, you're banned. It's just like, oh, it's broken. And you're like, what do you mean it's broken? And so a lot of that, and then that frustration with, like, well, what happens when you're locked into one platform? On the Ninja thing, we don't know the terms of his agreement, and so maybe he's not eligible for the same punishments as the rest of us.
Well, he's no longer a Twitch partner, so in his case, he's still streaming, and he's streaming to more people that he's been streaming to for a while over on Twitch. However, he's not able to receive, like, any kind of monetary compensation. I don't think the lawsuit necessarily comes from him. I do wonder if the lawsuit ends up looking at this and saying, hey, he's growing at rapid pace on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. Like, all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute. You know, it's kind of in my mind when I looked at that, I was like, it is a rich gets richer kind of scheme. He has the flexibility and power that he does not need whatever Twitch is kind of like driving towards him. But then essentially, like, everybody else in content creation is also now at a massive disadvantage. I've been thinking a lawsuit's going to be coming against Twitch, especially because they're based in California, for a long time. And I think what they've done, where we're able to make this show happen now, because of the change that they've made. I believe that's kind of in response as a way of trying to defend an upcoming lawsuit that might not be in the public sphere, or their legal teams like, guys, you're setting yourself up because everybody else outside of Twitch, everybody else allows for this stuff. So then Twitch comes out and says, sure, you can stream wherever, just not at the same time to these platforms. And without any kind of massive exclusivity deal, I think that's going to be ends up what gets challenged to court. And I think Ninja is going to be actually the catalyst to this. But then when I factor all this back into like Zepla's ban for her fighting against impersonation, I think that also, I wonder if that will accelerate this, or at least make this more part of the common thought in content creators, and also just these communities that support us, support 14. And then as you keep going at, out and out and out, all of a sudden you start to sit here and say, like, why should you be restricted to watching in one spot? Like, the viewer has should have the choice of their better viewing experience, and sometimes that is on Twitch, and sometimes that might be on YouTube. And we have an advantage because there's two of us. Like, so when I start to think about in terms of like fair competition, like they're like, we talked about this in a couple of videos in the past, early on in the channel. It's like, play to your strengths. What are your unique advantages that each and every one of you have? And like Zepla has, like, I think her bubbly personality, she's a joy to watch. She's got a lot of really good insight. The thing we always bring is like, there's two of us. We can bounce ideas off of one another. We can disagree. And it's always interesting to see, like, in the comments, they're like, I'm usually with Brian, but on this one, I think Chris really kind of, I'm with Chris on that. And that, sometimes people say that in like terms of shock, like, because they might agree with me on more things. And then occasionally it's like, yeah, that's the beauty of it. But the lesson here is, guys, if you follow Zepla, if you've ever followed Zepla, just go check to see if you're still following her. I think a lot of it was
Twitch regularly drops follows regardless. Because yesterday I said I wasn't following Pint, and I was like, well, that's just ridiculous. So it also is just a good reminder of, I haven't watched her in a few weeks. Well, who knows? We have people who said that, like, we have people who've hit the follow button for the first time on our channel 3-4 times, like people who are here every day. And then they come by and it notifies us, and it's like, oh, they followed. And it's like, followed? They're like a 23-month subscriber.
23-month subscriber. Yeah.
Like, why were you unfollowing? So,
it's like, here's some money, but I do not want to know when you're live.
Here's the money. Will you stop streaming? How much do I have to pay you to shut up?
Yeah.
So it would be like, but just the whole stress of it, right? She has been taking time off because she's been dealing with all this real world stress. She's a wonderful joy to the community, and she comes back and this is what she has to deal with. And she is one of the people like Ms. Tech that has had to deal with this constant. A while back, Yoshi-P put a letter out on the Lodestone warning people of scammers on Twitch. And I don't think it called out anybody in particular, any particular streamers, but
yeah,
I can see how Zepla would read that as she is one of those, because she is one of the largest Final Fantasy XIV creators, and it happens to her often. But like, Ms. Tech has had huge issues with it, and actually she adjusted overlays on her stream so that when they steal VODs, there is an overlay that's telling you, I'm not giving away a deal, I'm not quitting 14, I'm not a scammer. Like, and so she had to adjust the way she streamed for a long time there. Anytime you came into her stream, it was basically like, and she has a bot that's in her streams that's like, just so you know, my streams get taken for bots a lot, so please never give me any of your information. Please never log into anything. Please never click any links I post. Which then you have to wonder, as somebody who's like a partner with, I know she partners with a lot of brands, her in particular partners with like Corsair and all of that. What happens if Corsair ever wants to be like, hey, could you get everybody to check out our new website or whatever? And she's like, sorry, I actually intentionally have fostered a loving and supportive community that has a 0% click-through rate. Like by intention. Like, I'm not even an average person. They are anti-clickers. Like that's so. And then there's that added stress, and she always has to be thinking ahead of like, how will the next person impersonate me? Like, that sucks. And so make sure you guys are following Zepla. If you've never followed her before, go stop by, say hello. She's had a rough year. And for somebody that really focuses on typically the joy of the community, if typically people say like, well, I don't like Brian and Chris because one of them talks too much or whatever. Typically the complaint I hear about Zepla is people who don't actually like too much positivity. So if you're ever having a rough day and you want to just think about 14, typically the weakness is her strength. Typically what I hear people that take a break from watching Zepla is because she's too positive. And so like, I think that if you ever need that positivity, it's one of the greatest places to go find that as a source. And I've always appreciated that. Not that she doesn't talk about the downtimes when it's down, not that she's never real, and she has shared an awful lot of things about her personal life.
I think that just makes us more human, but we don't need to like rehash her story. Guys, thank you so much, Chris, dropping a shout out in Twitch chat for Zepla. So that's important. If you guys aren't following, make sure that you check her out. She does really good work. I think she's a real boon for the Final Fantasy 14 community. She finally got to interview Yoshi-P for the first time as a part of the Endwalker Media Tour. So there's so many good things I think happening, and hopefully we'll talk about it like more throughout the year, just like as we look at 2020 and Endwalker, 2022 and Endwalker. There's definitely been, we've had as a community some really interesting challenges, and maybe we'll explore that as a topic in the coming weeks, because it's just an interesting time to be a Final Fantasy 14 fan. All right, guys. Chris, do you have any final thoughts on this subject before we take a mini break? All right, great. All right, we're going to take a slight break. Coming up here on the show, we're going to talk about Square-Enix's video game Blitz. Lots of really cool stuff coming up. I'm going to go ahead and stretch my legs. I'm going to get a drink of water, and then I'll be right back. Chris, I think, is going to run some ads so that people do not get caught up in that on the Twitch side, and give us like 1 minute, 2 minutes ish, and we'll be right back. And then there's some questions in chat that I'll want to answer as well. So anyway, guys, we'll be right back.
All right, before we come back in, Silent. I understand that she's bashed me in the past. I understand that. I still like her content, even if she doesn't like mine. Yes. So.
There we go. It's like I'm muted. I saw Twitch was asking about if I just like turn this into an MP3 myself. I'm the one who does that. Like a part of the, there's a hosting cost. There's the I have the 2 podcasts, and then there's the software fee that I have.
Wait, who doesn't like Chris? Zepla said some disparaging stuff occasionally offhand. I mean, she streams for a long time, so it's probably not even something she remembers. But she said some offhand stuff about my content or my opinion in the past, and most recently, when it has come up, she reacted to a post of mine from Gaming Kinda, and she didn't end up posting that reaction to her YouTube channel. But because I was told she was reacting to it, I was watching her stream that morning when I was eating breakfast, because I lurk in her stream. I like it. And so I was like, oh, that's weird. How did she get from where she was? She was doing like goofy word problems or whatever. She like draws like a snowman that's an 8, and like she was drawing these things from like, I guess, like different elementary schools, how they teach math. And so like I was watching that and having a good time laughing. And then I went live, and then I got told like an hour into my stream she was reacting to a video of mine. And so then after my stream, I just went back and watched the VOD, and I just picked up where I left off and watched it straight through. And like it did, it just kind of naturally meandered its way. And then my post came up, and somebody posted in her react to this channel in her Discord. I don't think she really liked what I had to say. and at one point, to kind of explain where I was, I said that, I've always enjoyed 14 plenty, and I was a story skipper until Shadowbringers. And for people that say this game is only good for the story, I would argue you're missing the opportunity to appreciate all the other things it does really well too. Because I'm telling you, even without story, I enjoyed this game for a long time. And then her and a portion of her chat, because when you watch a Switch VOD, you get to see the chat. Her and a portion of her chat kind of went off on that for a bit, on how your opinions are not valid and you're not welcome in the community if you skip story. But meanwhile, like my video was still running in the background. And so then there were those of you who'd already seen my video that were you guys. I saw some of your names in there that were like, listen to him. Like he's explaining, like he's like, you're cutting him off. And I said like, but like I started in Shadowbringers and now I've been going back. And she goes, oh, so he's a repentant story skipper. And so like, actually she said some negative things about me, but actually the thing that offended me that she said was that I was a repentant story skipper, because what that message sends in my mind is that it is only okay if you're a skipper if you one day realize you're sorry for it. And I want to make it abundantly clear at every opportunity that this comes up that I am not sorry for how I got here in life. I'm not sorry that I got a degree in a field that I'm not in. I'm not sorry that I skipped story in 14. I'm not sorry for any girl I dated on the way to becoming the guy that got to be married to my wife. I'm not sorry for things just because they didn't work out. I'm happy with where I am. My life has taken unexpected turns, and there are aspects of it that are incredible that I'm thrilled with, and I wouldn't take anything back that got me here. And so I find it, so actually it's not anything negative about my content that I've ever taken personally. I know many of you have disagreed with my content. I don't take that personally. What I took personally was that she jumped in and decided how I felt and why that should validate my existence. And that's what I personally got offended at. I still like her content. I still watch her streams. I still watch her videos. That one single comment that was directed at me, I did not like. So just to kind of jump in front of that. But I still watch her. I don't chat much in her community. I don't chat much in any community that a portion of it doesn't like me. So I lurk in a number of communities that I don't belong in. Another community I lurk in a lot is Xenos, because like the high end community typically kind of use like, oh, that worked a game. Oh, those super
casual players. Yeah.
And so I tend to keep my mouth shut in a lot of the higher end communities as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's where we kind of, and I see Insanity Pepper's like, what? I thought all the content creators were a hive mind that always agreed. It's like, that's honestly where like you get more hive mind activity, like over on things like Reddit and over, like that's, and also that's where you end up seeing the most kind of drama, I think, bubble up in the regards, like, like you said, like we've seen that, we've talked about that. We've talked about how the story in and of itself is also one of the, it's I think one of the great strengths of the game, but it's also continuing to become the great weakness of the game. And they have to figure out a way to kind of address, like, how do you invite somebody into a 600-hour show in which that if you skip, you're ostracized, but if you don't, like, I guess we'll see you in 2024. Like the answer ends up becoming where that, like, that friend's just gonna be like, well, let's just go play something else. Like, why is this a requirement? Why is this the hill to die on? And it's always interesting because like we see them pop up from time to time within like comments and things like that. And that's something I rally against. I've been on my campaign to actively. Well, yeah, that's where
people are joking, but the problem is
that's where YouTube fails.
When a whole collective group starts joking, some people in that group are not joking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so like everything you're saying, some people are saying that jokingly, like, "Oh, you're not welcome here, huh, buddy, huh, buddy." But then somebody else sends Brian a message that says, "My favorite thing that either of us has ever gotten as a hate message is when they told you to die of ginger cancer." Yeah, because I've just never heard of ginger cancer. Yeah, and to put some context on that, I'm from a family of gingers, and so this idea that like I'm maybe like a carrier of ginger cancer, because like my family are all redheads, and so like this idea that like they're all dying of ginger cancer, like and so like I'm probably a carrier, and so like thank goodness I didn't marry a ginger, because we would have had ginger kids, and I would have passed on ginger cancer. And so like it just like in my head it just like went down this whole rabbit hole of like, and they're like, why isn't this being reported on? Well, they don't want you to know. Like it just took this whole, but like sometimes people they take it really far and they begin to say things, and that was not sent as a joke. That was sent in the context of some messages that were incredibly hateful. And so I'm trying to laugh at it because that's a way of processing it. Yeah. But like it can start as, oh, well, they're just joking. But like as the receiver of it, I can tell you, it doesn't take very long for a handful to not be joking. And those people tend to be very aggressive about letting you know.
Oh, yeah. And that's actually one of the things like Jake said, my rant videos have been doing numbers that they have. So what's interesting in that regards, as I've been saying, like, this is what we're going to be doing for a while, because like if y'all want to sit here and continue to harass me, I know how exactly to trigger the defense force, the very toxic side of the 14 community. And there's a thing that I have that a lot of people just don't think about when they decide to leave a stupid comment on a video. And it's called, I have an engineering degree and I've been developing a solution because YouTube won't seem to give us the tools that we need. One of the realizations of this was when Asmongold was getting trolled, or like, you know, a 14 Andy was like, blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, let me look through your chat history over on Twitch. Oh, turns out, yeah, you're just an asshole. Like you're not even a 14 person. You're a WoW person trying to, in an interesting way. The thing that like frustrates me, I'll probably put this in a video soon. The thing that frustrates me, like interestingly enough, about the 14 community is that despite all of 14's success and its status and its recognition within the MMORPG genre as a whole, it feels like that side of the community has only become worse, as opposed to like, oh yeah, 14 speaks for itself. No, you shall not speak of anything remotely like critical. ARR was perfection, and if you do not agree that ARR was perfection, then I don't want you playing my game. I'm like, oh, all right, Juice, let's go. And so one of the things that I've been working on is just a plugin, just to sit here and like, can I capture this kind of information? And ultimately, if I'm able to deliver on that, then to share that out within it. Like, I don't want to share it out to the public because I don't want to cause like witch hunting. But like, I've talked to a lot of 14 content creators. Like there is this visceralness. In my view, I was talking with Crojack and he's just like, just ban him. And I'm like, I struggle with that idea personally, because then you just create more angry people shouting off into the void. But my idea is like, can we just have some more information sharing so that I know like, oh, this is just a hateful human being that probably hates 14, but they know they'll get a reaction out of you. You know, they know they're gonna, you know, try to ruin somebody's day, and that's the game they're actually paying.
I like the idea that I could go to Twitch, and if I don't like seeing somebody else's comments, I as a user could ban them, and I wouldn't see their comments on any other video I watch. And it's just a ban for me. I'm not trying to ban them from the whole community. I hope they have friends and family that care for them and love them. I hope they get joy out of their job. I just don't need them in my life. Like, the world is a huge place. Like, it's 7 billion people. So like every once in a while I come across somebody, it's like, I just don't need you. And like, and that does run the risk of generating echo chambers, but people are doing that anyway. So like, I really like what shadow bans do, because it allows me to go into a community and just dodge one individual person who seems to come in and only try to stir crap up.
Yeah. And one of the things that really was just kind of like a catalyst, just because I was like, all right, fine. Like, if y'all like I'm literally like keeping my opinions, you know, I'm just like, hey, I'm talking about, you know, because it's like, I got tired of dealing with that part of the community for so long. And then I'm sitting here just like, all right, I'm just going to talk about like the news. I'm going to talk, and I'm going to make my controller guides. I really enjoy doing that. I feel like the joy that people who are able to come and play 14, especially those who like have some, form of, like hand dexterity, or like can't sit at a mouse and keyboard, or they want to lay down on the cat, like whatever the reason for playing on a controller, the fact that I've been able to help and them enjoy 14 is a real treat for me. But then I start to go look at the numbers, and it's like I'm putting 100, 200, 300 hours into making these guides, and just pouring myself into this as a passion. And I'm getting, I like, that's one of the beauties of having the multi-channel approach. Getting $40, like it's $40, and I'm like, okay. And then I'm sitting here just dealing with so much like bullshit and just so much hate that it's like, all right, like, well, the only answer they're giving me is to sit here and start banning people who just are like, if you were like, you wouldn't talk to somebody like this in person. And I'm like, okay, well, fine. All right, I'm going to sit here. You guys have, you're playing by different rules. I'm going to stop playing. I'm going to stop. I'm going to play the game. I'm going to talk about the game in the way that I want to talk about the game and how it's evolved. Because I've got 13 years. I've got over 120,000 hours of this game. Like, I'll talk about it. You're not going to put me in a corner, and you're going to be pissed off, and you're going to hate. You're not going to like what I'm going to say, and you're just going to deal with it. And then all of a sudden now it's like $300, and it's like, clearly they're not a minority. Like this kind of mindset is actually not a minority. However, I think they definitely are larger than people tend to represent. But when it's all said and done, it's like, I think there's a larger part of the community that's like, yeah, I really just want to know the truth. I don't want to hear this, everything's fine, gingerbread house and wicked, like story of like, it's going to be good.
So I think the problem is, I think what keeps it from taking over as the majority mindset is, I don't think it's one person. I think it's a moving group, because I think you go through it, and what happens is you live in that cycle because you entered it and it was fun to enter this space where people love this thing and are passionate about it. And that's a good thing. Yeah. And in this defense of this good thing that it seems like people are threatening, taking away from you, can turn really angry. And then what ends up happening is, at some point the game does something you don't like. And at first you're like, well, whatever, like it's still mostly good, but it keeps doing it, and it keeps doing it, and it keeps doing it. And then at some point you have to realize either you were wrong, or this game is actively ruining itself, and now it's the enemy. So now you either have to hate the game, or you have to recognize that you made a mistake. And those are your only exits. You've entered this like cult space, and those are the only two exits. You can't just like casually back out like, those hate messages were jokes. You can't do that. And so
cancer.
So people kind of slide out of that bubble in whatever way is easiest for them. Yeah. And makes the most sense to them. But like, other people have slid in. So I think it's a moving minority, and that's why it can feel diverse and vocal. Yeah. But I don't think anybody has the longevity to be hateful for 9 years straight. I think they at some point, unless there's something else in their life that's fueling that fire, at some point they get tired of hating people about this game. They're like, this is just a waste of my time. Yeah, but at some point you just hate you for 6 months. They could hate you for a year.
Well, and that's actually, you bring up a really good point, because that's a theory that I've been operating off of, is that whenever somebody comes in with that kind of mindset, the first thing I always kind of think is, oh, welcome, you must be new.
That's why I don't want to ban them.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's why, like, when Kojak
timed them out for 6 months.
When Kojak said that he just was like, just ban. I'm like, I think that's. I don't think that's the answer. But then again, it's how do you have these conversations in this kind of social media space where the world is, and tends to reward anger in that regards. My channel, my 14 channel, is being rewarded because I'm just literally but I know that it's like I'm talking about the things that are passionate to me, but I know I'm talking about them in a way that is not approved by this rolling group. But what's interesting is I always kind of think, oh, in another expansion, you're actually going to understand everything I'm talking about. Where like in your current, you entered into at the end of Shadowbringers, and now you're into Endwalker, and you're like, this is really great. I love how it respects my time. I love how it does X, Y, and Z. And it's like, here I am going like, well, I wouldn't do any kind of grind until 0.4, because all that's when the gear is set really for the expansion. So like, if you're hardcore grinding for gear, like, well, in the next expansion, you're probably going to be like, what happened? Why is this just the exact same it's always been? It's like, yeah, I could tell you that from Heaven's Word. Like, it was like, oh, this is the same model. We just maybe have a couple different pieces of new content to do, as opposed to like, what's the grind? You got tomes, you got raids. That's the thing. And every even number patch, the gear score goes up just ever so slightly.
On any individual subject, you are probably more or less educated than me. Like, the odds of us being exactly the same are slim to none. On any one individual subject, you are above or below me in awareness of that subject, right? There's going to be things that you just, through your life experience, you know a lot more about it than me, but there's going to be areas that like you just haven't done a lot with that.
Yeah.
And that's just people. So your opinions are always valid, whether they're less or more educated than mine, but like there's some context there.
Mm-hmm.
I think for everything you just said, what it is like you're saying it's a time factor. That person's going to come around given time. And it sounds like, hey, they have a different life experience than you. And that's really interesting.
Yeah.
You and I have trouble putting our feet in shoes of people who just now joined Final Fantasy XIV because we are so far removed from that. And so it's one of the things I love about my story characters. It's a brief glimpse into what that might be like. And it's weird. I think that for me, like, that's why I don't want to ban that person. I just want to time them out. And the first time I say something hateful, maybe you just had a bad day. Maybe something else in your life went wrong. And you're just like, God, 14 is such a sanctuary. Screw this guy. And that's fine. Yeah. And so I just want like, a 5-minute ban and then a 1-hour ban and then a 7-day ban and then a 30-day ban. And because I just assume at some point your tantrum is going to be over. And it actually sounds like I'd love to have a discussion with you because it sounds like you feel different than me. And I like that. Yeah. So like, I really just want to kick this out until that discussion can be reasonable.
I think of the Final Fantasy XIV Andy as a 2-year-old. Like, it's like, in my experience, like you're describing, let's get some snacks. You want some goldfish crackers and maybe some milk? Like, okay, asleep. Buddy.
You will just yell yourself to sleep. Let me know when you wake up. I probably enjoy being around you.
Oh, it's a fact, man. Like, it's like, okay. Yeah. Like that's when I always read those, I always try to read these in the most positive way. And what ended up just like, for me, just eventually just like where I was like, no, like, I'm all right. You've screamed. I'm going to put you in your crib. Like, that's literally the thought process behind this series. So just like, okay, fine. You're going to be in your crib and you're not going to like it. And you're going to tell me that you don't like it, that you don't want to be there. Well, tough. Like, when the solution is to not consume and the solution is just to go do whatever else, but yet you choose to consume, there's some compelling thing. It's like, all right, man, like, I don't know. The problem is, I don't think is with me. Like, it could be like, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm perfect, but like, at the end of the day, like, I'm just trying to make fun things that people will hopefully enjoy from an education perspective. Like, that's my ultimate goal. And it's like, y'all are sucking the fun out of it for me. And then all of a sudden I was like, why am I letting you? Right. Why am I letting you suck the fun out? And it's like, well, that's the whole point behind the the whole point behind the add-on
is against somebody's community guidelines, right? Like, I didn't know that their community kind of had a standing rule to not talk about that thing. And so I brought it up in somebody's chat and they said, like, and they just, boom, it's gone. Mm-hmm. Okay. Won't do it again. Like, no big deal. Like, it's not a big deal.
But that's where like
a lifetime ban. Like,
but that's also that's just where in my mind the
running over their dog, like
having that add-on and kind of sharing that kind of within, like, ideally if just within the 14 community, because like it's interesting to see like 14 has a bad reputation as a community and like I go talk to like Call of Duty people and they're like, oh, 14. Oh man, I'm sorry. I'm like, I like it.
My friends call me every time something happens in the 14 community and they're WoW players. And the two things that they like to make jokes about are I wanted to play your game, but your community said I wasn't welcome.
Yeah.
And then they like to insert something obscure, like because I had cucumbers on my salad today. Like, they like to just like pick something really obscure and just make fun of like, yeah, you guys are super sensitive about cucumbers on salad. So like, and you're like, so I went to a university where the fans raided the field one time before the game was over. The game didn't end and the fans were like, we won, and they charged the field. And then it caused this like 30-minute game delay because they had to clear the field and all the damage that like people knocked all this stuff over and all that. And so like it was this whole thing to end the game. And like we did end up winning, but then like from then on, my friends that watch college football are like, man, you guys really got this one in the bag. But don't worry, it's not over yet. It's not over yet. I'll let you know when it's over. And it's like, you got us. Like we did that. That was dumb. And so like all I can ever say is like, yeah, sorry about that. And then the other thing is, hey, I just want to see if everything was okay because I heard Yoshi-P issued an apology this week. And so like that's the other ongoing. So this week I got a call that said like, hey, I heard Yoshi-P had to apologize because apparently his devs are really good and he thinks you guys can't get good. And it's like, you got us. Like, yeah, that did happen.
Yep, that's correct. That's correct. Anyway, that was a fun little impromptu topic section as Brian and Chris share the dirty secrets of what's going on and that ginger cancer. Oh yeah. Anyway, are we ready to actually go into our second topic? It's a 4-topic show today, guys.
Yes.
Right.
I would like to thank. I have notifications turned off right now while we record. I would like to thank Caden and Rydalex for the subs over here on Twitch. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. 470. So we're a little bit off from that 850 goal, which we were originally like we hit 700 last month. And we're like, let's shoot for the moon. And then so anyway, we did that massive thank you stream, which was a lot of fun in Achievement Hunters. So we might have to readjust our goals in October. But thank you guys so much. We appreciate you inching us closer to that. All right. Coming up, we're going to talk right now. We actually don't need do you need to run a thing or are we going to be interrupted? Do you think? Usually takes us about 20 minutes.
Be interrupted.
What do you want to do? Do you want to run a 1 minute just to ensure?
Yeah, honestly, I had a lot of water, so let me take a minute.
Okay, Chris is taking a minute. We're gonna random. I did not create a thumbnail for that.
We're gonna take a little potty time.
Okay, yeah, that's dude. Like, yeah, go potty, please. Like, all right, and then you get the toddler. Like, I don't need to go. It's like, no. I know you need to go because we're gonna leave this house, and we're gonna have to stop. Oh my goodness, man! I tell you, it's we actually are almost we're almost 4 for 5 potty train here in the house. Almost 4 for 5 potty training here in the house. So actually, I'm gonna keep that up. I like how that looks while I read y'all's comments and I just kind of narrate to you guys. The ultimate ad break, bathroom breaks, abso-freaking-lutely. Spilling that tea, Fido says. Oh man, let me see here. You're and Donald over here says largely a macro crafter. I found the expert recipes beyond me, but I get it. They are end game for hardcore crafters, and that is fine. My personal frustration when it comes to like just the crafting is that it gets you to a tier, but it does not compete with best in slot. And I wish that there was some way that it did. Let's see here. When am I getting potty trained? Says Chris in this case. Man, goodness gracious. Thankfully I am at the moment, but I do like you start to think about it as you get older, like, okay, got it. Hopefully I'm a good 40 plus years away from any kind of concerns of that matter. Better crown pie. As it also increases the spirit bond speed. That was something that was interesting about earlier in the 14 days because spirit bonding was such an important aspect to different content. People would go into dungeons. That's why they actually added in the minimum gear score because people would go in with like crafting gear and stuff like that to run dungeons to get experience to spirit bond it with that. So it was always something interesting to see. And no, I do not use a litter box. We don't actually have a cat. We got a couple of dogs, so thankfully we don't need litter boxes. So all right, cool. And Chris, are you back?
I'm back.
All right, let's jump into it. I'll turn off the transitional view there. I love that. That's gonna make it so much easier for the edits. It's like scroll 4, look for this. Awesome. All right. Guys, welcome to this video live stream and or highlight. Be sure to hit that like button if you enjoy these kind of contents. Subscribe and let us know if you're new or sound off in a chat. And especially if you're new and this is the first time you're joining us, we're actually talking about the Square-Enix Blitz. That's kind of what I'm titling it. We got TGS 2022 going on right now. Nintendo also just had its live show, followed by Sony having its live show. announcing a lot of Square Enix games. It felt like we got a lot of farming sims, at least on the Nintendo side. But regardless, one of the big announcements for me personally was that Octopath Traveler 2 is making its way not just to Switch, but Steam, PlayStation. And interestingly enough, Xbox remains to be excluded from Square. Like, it is this continual drumbeat.
Yeah, well, the original Octopath is in Game Pass.
Yeah, or at least it used to be. Like, and it's on Xbox. Yeah.
That's how I played it.
Mm-hmm.
I put the demo on my Switch, and then I was like, man, I really need to make time for that game. I need to make time for that game. And then I made time for it, and I was like, well, I should probably play the games I already own. And they're like, well, it's free in Game Pass. Well, I practically own it. And so then so that's how I made time for it.
Yeah, so we know that it's coming in February. And the thing that was originally, I thought, I was like, oh, it's going to be Switch. And then just like with Triangle Strategy, with Octopath Traveler, then we'll see it actually roll out to other platforms as a timed exclusive to Switch. But this one is actually launching PlayStation 4, 5, Steam, and Nintendo Switch, which I was like, oh, that's good. I have platforms that I can play that. I'm probably going to pick that up personally now on Steam, namely because like I have it on Switch. I have it on my Xbox. I actually have it on Stadia, but there's a couple platforms, Stadia and Xbox, just not on that list. And it just continues to drive home like, well, then Square Enix and Sony, or at least Square Enix, and like, are they getting paid not to publish on that platform, or is it just not worth it to publish on their platform? I don't know, but Triangle Strategies also announced that it's coming to Steam, and like Harvesta or things like that. Like,
whatever that game's called.
Bunch of different games.
What if an RPG also had a farming simulator simulators coming out of 2020? Just like, how much Stardew Valley and Animal Crossing can you shove into anything was the theme of the Nintendo Direct this year. Mm-hmm. Regardless of developer, it was like, Brian, I know you've been developing a racing game, but I've thought about it a lot, and it just feels like I don't see any crops growing.
Right. And and Necroconquer is pointing out also that like they did announce Final Fantasy Crisis Core remake is actually coming for Xbox, which is interesting as a part of that because we still don't see Final Fantasy VII remake on Xbox. It is this weird. Got to be some kind of contractual thing. Like, it doesn't make sense. And we still also don't see Final Fantasy 14 on Xbox. I think people have actually been mocking it up. I saw some things going around Twitter talking about like that, and it ends up obviously being fake. And it's like, okay, so I don't know what's going on with the relationship between Square Enix and Xbox, but beyond that, I'm still excited that they're, at least for me, seeming to be stepping more into some of these franchises, or at least these game modes that, I don't think have been supported for a little while. Not to say that we don't have our, strategy or tactical RPGs, but now that they stepped in with like Triangle Strategy, I thought that was a really great game. I really enjoyed that. It's definitely in the running for game of the year for me. Some people felt like it was more talky than fighty, but at the end of the day, like I was like, I really enjoyed it. Is there anything that stood out to you in terms of the really recent announcements? Anything you're particularly excited about picking up?
Octopath Traveler, Octopath 2. That Octopath was incredible. I knew it from the moment I went hands on the demo, and the question was just, when do I find time? Like that's one of the problems is like Square's come out with so many titles here. How do you just pick the number you have time for? Because there's no way anybody has time for all of them. It felt like the Nintendo Direct. They were like, what are we gonna do with all these Square things? I don't know. Just put it every other game. Like I don't. And they're like, why did you give us so many? And like Square's like, we just gave you your share. Like we have other announcements for other events. Like it is an absolute blitz over there. When you wonder how Yoshi-P, regardless of his talent, if you didn't know who Yoshi-P was, if you wonder why an MMO team lead was being given a single player game to develop, and he was like, yeah, like there's some of his interviews that kind of imply like we weren't totally qualified to be given this project. It has to be all hands on deck all the time. They're like, guys, we're going to make 600 games. Like, oh, wow. Like eventually? No, like right now. We're going to start 600 games right now. So take your workload, add 5 games on top. Like it is absolutely absurd how much content is coming out of Square Enix.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that I actually appreciate about this, because I see people talk about their concerns for Final Fantasy 16, that it's an action combat system, that they really wanted to see a Final Fantasy game go back to kind of a turn-based combat. And in my mind, I look at that, I go, well, isn't it like Octopath? Isn't that like Bravely Default? like those properties, and also the weirdness of their names. I see actually chat calling out like, why are their names so strange? And I was like, it could be an IP thing, a licensing thing. They want to
Octopath
make sure.
Traveler's lazy.
Yeah.
What if it's about, so I got a game and you're just going to like travel around, and we'll just have like a big path that you follow around.
Okay.
And then we'll start you at like eight places. So we'll call it like
Octo?
eight path going.
Traveler. Oh, 8 path going.
Octopath Traveler. Yeah, that sounds great.
There you go.
And then their next one came out, and we're going to call it Project Triangle Strategy. And I was like, at this point, they're just shipping working titles. Like,
they are big because it was Project Octopath Traveler.
Happening?
It was Project Octopath Traveler. Now it's just like Octopath Traveler 2. I personally would love like the announcement that I did not see, and again, I haven't seen every bit of news that has come across my desk this morning. The news I did not see was like, I'm like, they did a live as a part of this, like back, in the spring, they announced that. And so I was like, oh, are we going to start to see kind of the remaster of the NES, SNES era games in this style? Will we see Final Fantasy VI and things like that? And we have yet to see that, at least according to my knowledge. And I was like, that's what I'm hopeful for. That's the message that gets me to tear up and be super excited, because I love the art style. I love the direction. I love this concept of this 2D HD visuals, because I appreciate Octopath and its visuals so much. Now, what I'm looking forward to in Octopath 2, kind of as kind of like, oh, they did Octopath 1. Here's some of the weaknesses that I felt in that game. And one of them was that, yes, you have your travel companions and they have their stories that you can play, but there was not so much character interaction, right? It's kind of like the main protagonist, and then the game is not really aware of who you've chosen. And I get it from a narrative perspective. I get it from everything that's doing.
It turns into a real Bandersnatch situation otherwise, right? Where like, based on the order that you unlock things and the priority you put on different people's stories, there has to be different outcomes in each scene. So it turns into like Octopath Traveler has 67,000 endings. So that starts to get a little bit harder. But I agree with you. That was an area that it could have improved at. It was incredible. They're coming out with that new music game, a little like Guitar Hero with like Final Fantasy music. All the Square-Enix music. It's a lot of. They're like 500 songs, and I bet somebody that doesn't know Square-Enix like, how do they get 500 songs for that? And Square-Enix fans are like, how do they get it down to just 500 songs? So like, it was a lot. So it's exciting to see them not just bound to Switch, because that team's been incredibly talented. And while you and I are both huge fans of the Switch, Nintendo as a whole isn't totally convinced the internet is sticking around forever. And so they're not great at internet related things. And that opens up that team, if they ever were to want to develop something that had internet compatibility as part of its game design, they would have that opportunity. Because like GoldenEye coming to the Switch, my brother's a huge first-person shooter fan, and he goes, I just don't want to play online games with the Switch. I want to play GoldenEye online. Please, God, don't like. I'm happy to play games on the Switch. Please don't make me play games online with the Switch.
Yeah,
it's a rough experience.
It's still
single player games on the Switch. Great. Occasional online interaction, right? I'm playing Pokemon. My nephew's playing Pokemon. We sit down next to each other and trade. Works great. I do not want like Smash Brothers online. I find wildly frustrating.
One of the things that has made me like why this announcement is even more exciting is that, oh, I can actually get it on Steam day one, meaning I'm assuming it's going to run on my Steam Deck, where when I play Multiverses is an incredible online experience. When I play, like now it's like I can add in, obviously the, like Octopath Traveler to this. Like that's going to make my library so much easier. I do have the entire Final Fantasy, classic pixel collection on Steam Deck. I've got 14 on Steam Deck. Like all of a sudden, like this, like I'm curious to see what ultimately happens with Switch and Nintendo. Do we see a Switch 2? Do we see something different coming out of that company in the next couple of years? Because like the Steam Deck in and of itself, being its level of flexibility, that's really where the competition comes in. Like whether like I have a Switch OLED because I'm a Nintendo nut, but at the same time, I'm also somebody who's very hard on Nintendo. So when I talk about Nintendo Online, there's always these interesting Nintendo defenders that come in. They're like, you just hate this company. It's like, well, I hate that I give them money and then complain that they're not actually innovating. Like that's my biggest complaint. I'm like, oh, you made a slight step in progress. Here, let me reward you with money. And then Nintendo's like, people love it. Like they're
The
buying
Ethernet
it.
dongle is like the perfect metaphor for
Yeah.
Nintendo. Like a clever, wildly branded thing that I can kind of give them money for, but not every Nintendo fan owns, that does a task that everybody else does natively.
Yeah.
Like it's like, come on. I love Nintendo. I do. I've been a huge fan. I'm really excited. There's another Zelda title coming.
Yeah.
I'm super pumped. But the Octopath Traveler team, I think they're really crushing it, and I don't want to see them bound to only the choices that Nintendo makes, because there will be a platform after Switch, and Switch has been wonderful. I enjoyed the Wii, but there will be a time after the Switch, and if that time after the Switch is like, the dark ages, like a Wii U or something, they're going to be bound to that, because that's the choices they made, and they chose to tie themselves to that dev environment. So I think the fact that they've had success and they're having success elsewhere, since we're here to talk about Square-Enix, that's a really good thing for the Square-Enix side of things.
Yeah, it's really good for Square-Enix. I think it also continues to show the power that Square-Enix has. I saw earlier in chat, someone's like, I'm locked into the Sony ecosystem because of Square-Enix, because that's where they're publishing all these games. And I don't blame them for that at all. Like, that's the reason why I bought a PlayStation and a 2 and a 3 and a 4.
Sony
Still can't get a 5. One day I will.
That's
we'll
why
see how
they
that
pay
goes.
for Square-Enix games. They know that a portion of PlayStation owners are there because of third-party agreements they have.
Well, and that's, I followed them from the SNES to there, because I was like, yeah, I am a Square-Enix nut. Like that defines like this nostalgic, that defines who I am. And that's where it's like, I definitely really like to experience their games. And I'm like beyond thrilled that it seems that there's going to be a little bit more flexibility, especially with Sony's recent kind of, I guess, coming to terms with how the model's changing, where they're actually publishing it on PC. Been playing Spider-Man on my deck, and it's a wonderful experience, especially because I can't, I was like, I'm not going to buy a 4. I'm not going to buy a PS4 if I'm able to now find one, but then save up the money, which will probably be maybe next year. Well, I'll see if I can get a 5. But before we continue on, Phil, with 40 months of support as a member over here on YouTube, thank you guys so much. If you happen to be here on YouTube, if you happen to be a member, it's weird because they don't tell you, but if you actually hit the $1 button, you'll tell you if you have a free membership promotion. Kind of like over here on Twitch, it just says you've been supporting us for excellent amount of time. On YouTube, you have to take an extra step, and that's what Phil did. So 40 months, dude. You
just got their Scrum certification.
What? I missed that.
Yeah.
Oh, just got, okay. I see the message themselves. Yes, awesome. It won't let me highlight it here. It didn't actually show up with that message. So one way or another, I just wanted to say, hey, congratulations, Phil, and thank you so much for that support. Chris, do you have any other thoughts or anything in terms of the Square Enix's lineup? Are you going to be picking up Theater Rhythm at all? Like, is that a game that interests you?
Honestly, right now, like the question is, what can they put in Game Pass? And so as much as I'm loving all these games, it's what can they put in Game Pass? I think right now Final Fantasy 13 is on its way out of Game Pass. So they've been passing through. I think Final Fantasy 10 and 12 have so there's been different ones passing through. Game Pass has been kind of a filter because I'm finding the number of great games that are out there these days overwhelming. And so it's a question of like, okay, I can only afford to buy so many games in a year. How do I decide where to put it? And so like Game Pass as a curator of like, here is the menu. You don't have your choice of all food that can be prepared in the world. You have this menu has been a really great way to like make it to where I'm not spending all my time deciding what game to play, and instead I'm just playing games. Mm-hmm. And I understand that's limiting me. I do, but that's been plenty considering I still play 3 MMOs. So that's been plenty.
Just
but
3.
I find Xbox Game Pass to be like that perfect answer. And I hope that other platforms, I do find like there've been through seasons in my life where Steam was how I filtered things, and like the Steam summer sales and things like that. So different phases of your life, you just kind of trust a different curator to kind of help that through that. As far as Square Enix story, shouting out at the end here, and then I'll shout out at the beginning of the next video. I am doing 3.1 to 3.55 for my first time next week on Twitch.
Nice. So guys, be sure to be following over on Twitch. Link is pinned in the YouTube and in the description. If you guys aren't following us over there, Chris streams Monday through Friday. We've been actually doing these live shows Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and hopefully we'll be able to get those and keep those continuing because these are a lot of fun. A good way to kind of kick off the day, and also in a way. So with that, guys, I think it is time that we actually take our our quote unquote second break and step into our third topic, which is Yoshi-P's latest apology tour, his letter to the community, especially as it relates to all the Savage drama and the nerfs this week. And it's interesting because there's just no amount of different takes that I've seen that it's just like a wide range. Some people like, oh, it's just 1%, or like, oh, that's, why, etc. So we kind of talked about this at the start of the week. And obviously here we are at the end of the week, this with an official letter from Yoshi-P. So we're going to be taking a quick break. We'll be right back. Stretch your legs, get a drink of coffee or water, and we will continue the show here in just a minute.
2 minutes.
All right, I'm back. All right.
There were moments like that in sales. And
Good old.
You came in here for 18 of us had 15 Panera boxes.
I know.
And I'm like,
There we go.
Caviar.
Wouldn't let me full screen. Yeah, what's up? Thank you very much, guys. Glad to be back.
All right, I'm back.
Welcome back.
Hey, I was watching Philip DeFranco this week, and he talked about this TikToker that I guess it seems like, maybe he got out of school and like his content creation was going really well. And so he decided he was going to do that full time. And it seems like maybe he's gotten a little bit of frustration towards his audience. And so he decided to let them know that his job is harder than their 9 to 5. And Phil was laughing at him. And I was telling Claire, like, this week I've had I don't know, it's just been a hard week. Like, we had some technical issues throughout the week and all that. And we went out and hung out with my sister and her husband a little late last night. And so I'm kind of dragging this morning. And I'm just like, and she's sitting at the dinner table working on her laptop. And I'm like, if only somebody knew what it was like to just have to work 5 days in a row. Like, people just don't get the struggle of having to put in 8 hours. Like, I'm having fun at work, but I'm just so tired. And like, I just don't know that anybody gets it. And she's laughing. If only somebody got it,
if only somebody understood.
It just there's no way to relate to this. It's a unique experience.
Yeah, that was such a weird TikTok. Like, that was just like, I delivered copiers like to Louisiana, like these big mammoth machines, and it was like the drive, oh man, like, no, content creation is so much easier. Like, but his idea is like, oh my gosh, yeah.
What's the hardest element of work you've ever had in a job?
The hardest element?
What's the one thing that you're like, okay, I'm thinking up a future job opportunity, and the one thing I do not want them to say, hey, we're going to compensate you, but this has to exist as part of your workflow. As an example, mine is swing shifts. I had to do swing shifts. And when somebody tells me they do swing shifts, I'm like, there is no job and no compensation plan where I want that back in my life.
Yeah.
Like, no matter how cool the work is, and no matter how much they're paying me, I don't want to do swing
I
shifts.
left the job because they tried to implement that. They're like, okay, we're going for 24, and then it's like, oh, we'll do 6 weeks, and then we'll shift you into this thing 6 weeks, and shift you into this. I was like, abso-freaking-lutely not.
Take daylight savings, do it times 6, and do it every 6 weeks.
Yeah. No. Like, I don't. And then there are people who are like on the night shift that are like, I want to be on the night shift. Like, I was like, why are they trying to make us trade? Like, no, thank you. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I definitely would not go with the swing shift.
Fido says being on call nonstop. I will say the only way I go back to I've had a job where I was on call 24/7 when I sold cardiac devices. And I take phone calls like in the middle of like singing happy birthday to my nephew. Like it sucked. The only way I go back to that is if every single person in the entire world that I care for is like shipped off to a paradise that I can't reach them. Like they're all over there. Like, cause that was the part that made it suck. I actually didn't mind being on call because I liked the work and I liked the challenge of it. What I didn't like was that I could only be in one place at once. And so it was constantly detaching me from hanging out with those that I cared about. Like if there was a way to not have anybody I cared about and not somehow be lonely, like the on-call part, but I don't think there is. So I think the on-call, that's a fair point as well. It's like,
before we jump into the letter, Katie asks, do I still like the limited Blue Mage? I do, but I still feel like overall, I want to see more limited jobs added in to really have a better understanding of the system. I like the power and the flexibility it brings. I still wish we had a curated versus limited system for each job where the curated was allowed in all the content the way that you experience it right now. That's what I call curated, because when they added in the limited, that became, okay, what do you call the original system? I wish that Blue Mage had a curated version so that it could participate in all the content, just like all the other jobs. But then you could literally like flip a switch and be in limited mode, which then basically gives you the collection of spells. But then same thing with the concept of summoner, same thing with the concept with all the jobs where it's like, yeah, you have this experience. And like in my mind, then content could actually kind of play into that. Imagine if they said, hey, here's Eureka 2.0, and legitimately like this is like every job is in a way like how you want to build it is how you want to build it. We're going to just, you're going to have points, you're going to have abilities, you're going to pick what you want, you can sub job stuff, etc. Like that would be my dream to see.
Limited Warrior could have given us Island Sanctuary, chopping down trees, slaying dangerous animals.
Yeah.
yeah. You could have tied a piece of content to each limited job and let them kind of live out their fantasy, but then toss them into a restricted mode for a party. But the system isn't set up to do that. So as it sits, you would have to delete Blue Mage. So as it sits, it's just not like people are like, I hope they fix Blue Mage, and like that like idea like that. It just won't happen, right? Like it's not like, oh yeah, they have this the WoW term, the ripcord. There is no ripcord. I like Blue Mage as it is. I think we'd lose more than we'd gain. I think gaining one more way to play in the Magic DPS category is not as much of a net gain to the community as a whole as an entire sub game mode for anybody that's ever gone and done anything with Blue Mage. It's wild. Blue Mage Arm Veil, Blue Mage 24-mans are nuts. Really neat stuff.
The Cosmos says, anybody have a reaction to them adding a pet to the Dragoon? I don't know if this is breaking news because I haven't seen it, but I would love for them to have a Dragoon, a pet Wyvern for the Dragoon, even if it was something like you build up a meter and it, kind of almost like, machinist, almost kind of like whatever, that all of a sudden you get a call out forth a pet dragon. That'd be really cool. Now, personally speaking, I love pet classes. Clearly, Yoshi-P does not. And we've moved further and further away from what a pet class is in 14, but I would personally love that. Heck, that's where maybe Beastmaster comes in as a limited job to really kind of have a pet class style system, or same thing with Puppet Master, same concept. But yeah, I'd love to see something of that nature, especially for the Dragoon, especially because when you look at the lore and how the game's developed, you got Estinian always hanging out with dragons now. Let's just make it happen, man. Let's stop, let's put a ring on it. All right, we ready to jump into topic number 3?
Let's do it.
All right, I'm gonna let you read it because you read it, and I'm gonna butcher it because I haven't pre-read anything. All right.
Hold on.
Yeah.
And I would like to just have it up on so I can scroll independent of you.
Perfect. Yeah.
He's recording over on the YouTube side of things, so the Twitch side is just going to look less professional.
Yeah.
All right.
Hello and welcome everybody to our third topic for this live show. If you're joining us live, thanks so much for being here. Be sure to like and comment in chat and let us know how you're enjoying the show itself. And beyond that, today's third topic, we're going to jump into Yoshi-P's latest letter to the community. This is hopefully putting a bow on the Savage nerf and the changes and like the miscalculations they've made. And I have not yet read this. Chris has been able to kind of peruse it a little bit. So I'm going to let him take over and actually start breaking down this letter. And then we're going to discuss it. As always, you can sound off in the comments with your own thoughts, your own theories, how you receive this, positive or negative. Chris, take it away.
And as we put a bow on this, next week on Twitch, I'm going to be playing 3.1 to 3.55 for my first time. So if you guys want to see me clear Heaven's Word post MSQ, then come hang out there. So with that, let's get going. Hello, this is Naoki Yoshida, producer and director of Final Fantasy XIV. There has been a lot of discussion surrounding our explanation for adjusting the HP of the boss in Abyssos, the 8th Circle Savage, P8S. In patch 6.21, as well as the necessity of the adjustment itself. Firstly, please allow me to apologize for the disruption caused by the balancing issue and for any offense resulting from the insufficient explanation we initially provided. In this post, I hope to clear up any misunderstandings as to how and why this adjustment was made. The reason for the HP adjustment. As was explained in the 6.21 notes, a miscalculation on our part resulted in the boss's HP being roughly 1% too high in comparison to the difficulty of the previous 4th stage Savage Rage. We do, of course, understand and appreciate that many players nevertheless honed their ability rotations, raised item levels, repeated the fight over and over and over to claim victory. Having the HP set to this higher value, however, had other undesirable consequences, including certain jobs being excluded from party recruitment, a growing dissatisfaction with the overly punishing degree of difficulty. As our miscalculation was the root cause of these issues, we decided the best course of action was to explain our mistake and correct the inflated HP to the value it should have been in the first place. This type of correction has little precedence in Final Fantasy XIV's development, and although the discussion was made after considerable debate, we once again apologize for the impact it had on player enjoyment. The source of the miscalculation. Well, this issue was touched upon in the patch notes, but allow me to explain our balancing process in further detail. Firstly, the development team bases adjustments on the following premise, that the top percentage of players are overwhelmingly better at the game than we are. We regret not stating this more clearly in previous explanation, but said premise is the reason why we do not release content tuned precisely as it was when the battle team's battle testers cleared it. We always add a little bit extra to the boss values before rechecking the fight and releasing it live. The team responsible for balancing boss fights does so without debug commands and at the appropriate item level, employing available materia, food, and medicines while experimenting with mitigating actions and various job compositions. Yet, we recognize that the player skill far exceeds our own. If we were to ship content with the same values which challenged our battle team, the top raters would be deprived of that by the skin of your teeth victory in the initial week of release. Based on the team's skill and our experience, that little bit extra usually translates to a balanced test clear value plus or minus 1 to 2% HP, plus 1 to 2 percent
It looks
HP.
like plus 1
Just
or
plus
2.
1 or 2. Yeah, I was like, I don't think minus. I don't think they're better. Plus 1 or 2% HP. And the final values account for other mathematical factors too, of course, such as the estimated damage the party could deal from the moment of victory to the end of the time limit, as well as the total burst damage potential based on frequency and amount inflicted. These numbers, these various calculations are based on what we are referencing when we said our team's performance was higher than anticipated. This latest installment features a boss closely tied to the dark past of a major character, and so we were focused on making this battle even more of a challenge than usual. As such, the battle team spent an inordinate amount of time together designing and testing the fight mechanics, which in turn led them to improving party coordination and communication beyond what they might usually achieve for a given boss fight. Final adjustments were, however, still based on the team's victory data, and so the little bit extra we added for the release proved to be that little bit too much. Reasons aside, our adjustments were off by that crucial 1%, and we again offer our apologies to those whose gaming experience was adversely affected by the correction and insufficient explanation. A high difficulty raid is a special kind of battle. We want players to enjoy a satisfying hard-won victory, and we keep that ideal in mind when making tweaks and balance adjustments. Although we failed to walk that delicate line this time, the experience will help us to design a more perfectly thrilling battle in the future. Now, why adjust the duty rather than the job balance? When balancing jobs, each job's base numbers at the applicable item level are adjusted with respect to the difficulty of playing that particular job and its rotation, as well as its support actions and their effects. Naturally, the above factors are also affected by the mechanics and combination thereof at work in each battle, meaning that every job's numbers will not necessarily be at ideal values during all available battles. In addition to this inherent variance, there are indeed times when our calculations or adjustments are incorrect, producing damage numbers lower than intended and requiring subsequent strengthening of a job. In this case, when considering job balance more broadly, the jobs that needed emergency adjustments in this fashion were Paladin and Warrior. However, the aforementioned issue with Abyssos the 8th Circle Savage also caused certain jobs to be better suited to the raid than others, and made the damage check required to clear extremely strict, resulting in a situation where players felt obligated to choose jobs with higher damage output when attempting the raid. Attempting to ameliorate this by buffing certain jobs without making changes to the raid itself would have negatively impacted the overall balance within each role and likely resulted in disappointment for those whose jobs were already dealing sufficient damage for the raid and therefore received no adjustments. Unfortunately, adjusting all jobs in such a short period is not feasible. Thus, the root cause of the issue was a mistake from balancing the duty, and an immediate fix that maintains role balance was required. It is a game design fundamental as well as our policy that rather than adjust the jobs to suit each battle, we balance the jobs independently and only then set the battle content difficulty. Changing the job balance for one single duty would end up causing more problems than it solves. So we decided to address the problem in the manner we did, by ameliorating the root cause. I appreciate that regardless of our rationale, this issue has been a source of frustration for many, and I apologize for that. I hope, however, that this has helped clarify our approach. In conclusion, the adjustment to Abyssos the 8th Circle was never intended to be a nerf, but merely the correction of values that were set inappropriately by a 4th stage Savage raid to begin with. Nevertheless, I understand that it feels like a nerf for those who worked hard and were on the verge of clearing the fight as it was originally implemented, and I regret having caused such disappointment. As we strongly wish you to continue enjoying fiercely challenging Savage fights, particularly in the early days after release, will do our utmost to further improve the tuning of these battles. Furthermore, we will strive to better understand what our players think about such issues and improve our operational protocols, perhaps by waiting a week before implementing fixes, in addition to providing details on our perspective, so that if we again find ourselves in a similar situation, we may arrive at a solution that is more satisfying to everyone. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, I sincerely apologize for any disruption that our error may have caused to your gameplay experience and appreciate your patience. Naoki Yoshida, Final Fantasy XIV producer and director.
So I have a couple of thoughts. First and foremost, like I always love how we are able to get so much detail into the thought process, the development process. And I think that's actually really valuable to us as a community. And also at the same time, both things can be true, is that it feels like from N Walker that this has also been a year filled with apologies, with mistakes and errors. And I can't help. It doesn't mean what I'm going to say is true, but I can't help but thinking that with 16, with his added responsibilities, with all that's going on, like I think it's Square-Enix asking too much of Yoshi-P in this regard. And like, is this going to be a pattern that continues on until said release, or assuming that Yoshi-P gets his wish and gets to start working on a brand new MMO after 16's released? What do you think?
So I am working on a really big post for Gaming Kinda, where I have had the chance to sit down and talk with Ren Karagani to represent the higher end players who do take a lot of this on week one, and have cleared the tier. And I am also I also talked to Mo Raines, who puts a lot of time into Savage very early on, but on the much more casual party finder end of things, as well as watching and reading reactions from Zeph, Xeno, Happy, Quasi, like a whole gamut of players across a wide variety of skill sets and content types. And the overwhelming frustration is that the fight was clearable by, yes, less than maybe some previous tiers have had in the past, but it was clearable by a not insignificant number of teams and clears were continuing to happen. Gear would have naturally removed 1% off of this boss's, it's 1.7 million life off the boss's health. Gear would have naturally made that 1.7 million more achievable as the weeks went on. But job balance is going to be something that lingers. And yes, we need the gear to be able to ideally go into Criterion Savage with the highest item level possible. Yes, we need the gear to drop so that people don't feel like they're grinding right up against 6.3 because we think we're getting an ultimate next patch cycle. And loot lockouts, there is a limited number of loot lockouts in a, roughly 266-day cycle between Savage raids. So I think my frustration here is that this acknowledges the issue with this one particular fight and explains it as a one-off mistake. And it's a very generous apology if that was the case. But whether it was 1% or 10%, this one fight, if this fight hadn't screwed up, a fight would have eventually screwed up, because everything I've learned over the last 24 hours as I've kind of gone to shape my opinion by more broadly understanding how people feel, is there are some fundamental combat designs that make job balance at high risk of always being screwed up based on changes they've made for Endwalker. And as a result, it's just a matter of time until any encounter is off by some unsurmountable percentage because the job balance is faulty. Like, at its nature, it's not an issue of like, a certain potency to be adjusted. Like, the whole mentality that they've taken to just designing any particular job and the system as a whole is just flawed in Shadowbringers or in Endwalker. And it's until they shift that, we're going to keep needing these adjustments.
Well, especially as we continue to add more and more jobs every expansion. Why, I'd be very curious, especially to chat here on what I'm about to say, because I've heard this sentiment get louder and louder each expansion. That there's a group of people who would love to see nothing more than no jobs actually added as a part of an expansion, and have every job, that time spent on making a new job, have every job kind of receive kind of a deeper level of pass, a deeper level of work or adjustment or rework, or like essentially like, okay, because Yoshi-P's commented just on how long it takes to make these jobs and make them viable, that it's like, okay, like what if that time was spent on, like, could you like take a look at 5 jobs in the course of it? Because like I say that like we got 2, but Summoner got a complete rework, and so we're starting to see kind of like, okay, we're going to add and we're also going to do some kind of rework. Would we end up seeing in the long run that being a value? Do you think that would be something that help kind of solve it? Because Yoshi-P also said that based off of Shadowbringers and Endwalker, we're going to get an idea of how all this stuff is connected together.
So the advantage of a consistent patch schedule is they know how fast they need to work, and we know how fast we need to consume the content to feel comfortable as players. The consistency is one of the things that Final Fantasy XIV offers in a way that no other MMO and game at all in game studio that I know of can match. Their consistency, their product management, their ability to say, we have the resources to make sure that the team can deliver consistently And within that can ideally provide balance to the devs. And if they have times that they feel really great and they're working really great and they're inspired and they're working really fast, we'll use that to kind of level out the times that maybe they had a hard week at work. And we can manage all that instead of you being on this emotional roller coaster with us. And with very rare exception, this game runs like a bus or a train schedule. I mean, it is unbelievably predictable, and they communicate at set intervals in between. So we always know there's always an announcement. The train will be here in 20 minutes. The train will be here in 10 minutes. And so it's been incredible. The downside of that is when it comes to job balance and when it comes to job design is when do you do it? The advantage that World of Warcraft accidentally causes by having these 9,000 day patch cycles is there's a lot of time where the engine isn't moving. But if you are releasing content every 2 months and you're releasing major content in between on those 4-month intervals, when do you balance it, right? So if you balance this tier right up against the tier releasing, you frustrate people that are in the middle of solving it. If you balance it after this, you run the risk of screwing with Criterion that releases in 6.2.5. If you balance it after that, you risk screwing with Ultimate in 6.3. 6.3 is like, they're going to be able to take all of 6.3 to solve Ultimate. So then you risk screwing with 9 through 12 in 6.4. If you mess with that, why not push it to the expansion? And then in expansion, you're supposed to have 2 new jobs. How do you balance for those? If all these parts are moving, well, where do they slide in? So it's just, you're putting your hand in a running
we've
engine.
also seen that happen in PvP this year with the patch. Like we got a whole different patch, and that caused all kinds of problems. That's where it's like back to kind of the thing. It's like we've seen a lot of different apologies, some that I don't feel are justified from Yoshi-P's perspective, apologizing for the fact of this global pandemic that couldn't get us servers, etc. Like I get that from a, you know what, like I'm sorry because it's like we're all in this together. That's a pain point. So I don't count that as that. But then we see like these little things that we haven't really seen happen before in terms of the experience, at least from my best memory. I do remember that it took a long time to actually take down Twintania. I brought up that example at the start of this week where eventually somebody did clear it, but they had to go back and mechanically make some changes because they found like it was, you know, something within the RNG or how the twisters essentially kind of dominated the conversation. It was very, very, like, it took a lot longer for them to get it clear on that than they originally expected. But a part of that was exciting for a lot of players. And because I've seen even WoW, people say WoW takes at least over a week, but even from professional teams to actually get down all of these fights as well. So there's some interesting,
it's over a week, which it's really weird. They see a reset. And then because it's a global race, what happens with the fact that EU and NA servers go off at different times? Like it's a whole thing. There's this whole meta aspect to solving the problem of a WoW raid that is outside of the boss mechanics.
Now, I do want to bring up, because it kind of touched on something you were talking about, and over in Twitch chat, PJ Earl says, has gatekeeping in Final Fantasy gotten so bad that a 1% change causes this much drama? And my perspective on it is that I think is if you actually, and this could be my bias because I obviously have an obsession and follow the 14 in the community for many, many years. I tend to see, and we've seen kind of in a pattern within the 14s community, usually around the 0.3 time frame, you end up seeing a lot more drama because there ends up being a little bit more burnout. Players really might not understand why they're starting to feel the way they're feeling about a game. But with Endwalker, we actually saw that actually kick off pretty early. Once the expansion was finished, you finished the story, all of a sudden you start hearing more and more people talking about like, oh my gosh, like, why am I not enjoying this game the way that I used to? I'm really confused. And that in and of itself, I was like, yeah, it's been a long journey. So I think that within the community itself, a couple of factors have happened. One, they concluded the story. So you're not actually getting 0.1, 2, and 3 really driving the rest of the expansion story and that kind of level of excitement. But you also have seen the increase in time between patches, which we think is the right call, but that gives a little bit more time to find faults and to find complaint and to find frustration. And then you also have a community that has been so also hyped up on the defense and the never say anything bad about this game, that all of a sudden when somebody's like, I'm really not enjoying this the way that I thought I might would have, and then all of a sudden you run up against that side of things. I think this is kind of like one of those like perfect disasters that it's not a disaster, but ultimately when people start to really kind of look into it, it's like that's that's kind of what the cycle of games as a service is. We are in a I call it the 3 seasons of MMOs, or the 3 seasons of the service-based game: hype, grind, and bitch, and where you just complain and you get frustrated over it. And so I think that's just where we are at as a community. Not that you can't be hyped for what's coming, not that you can't be currently grinding in the game, but when you take this onto social media, like, yeah, what else are they going to talk about? Like, there's not news to talk about. We don't know much about, we know stuff, but we're not getting any new information. As soon as that kicks up, then we go right into a hype season.
Spoilers, right?
Right. Oh yeah. And you can't talk spoilers. And it's like, hey, we got 9 years of like stuff that it's like, oh, you're new to the game. That's going to completely change what we were able to talk about with you guys. So, like, and that's a reality that we're all facing. So that's my perspective on what P. Gerald's talking about, that this has always been a part of the community. The reason why it feels more prevalent is because of the things that I just mentioned. What do you think, Chris?
I think, first of all, we are incredibly blessed that a lot of times the actual spark that causes drama in the 14 community is very small. Compared to what other games may have had to live through, or other industries may have had to live through, where a lot of times we are complaining about balance that is within a couple percentage points. We are complaining about something that, like, and people are still achieving. Like, we are complaining about something small. But second of all, usually the spark itself, I think a lot of times it gets the headline, right? Because it's the example, it's the living example. I'm not making up a hypothetical situation. This is the situation. But it represents something much larger. And so there's usually something bubbling up. And because this community has not always had a historical community-wide ability to discuss any shortcomings in the game, anybody's frustration with the game tends to get bottled up. And so all this frustration kind of bubbles and bubbles and bubbles. And the moment there's a chance to talk about it, they can talk about it. And so you are seeing people talk about, okay, I had a lot of issues with the 2-minute burst window change for Endwalker. I had a lot of issues with the following job changes. And those issues aren't new to this tier. They've been there and they've been there. And the person's been like, I don't like this. It's going to cause a problem at some point. I don't like this. It's going to cause a problem at some point. But because everything was going fine, people were like, oh, you're just crying wolf. You're just making a mountain out of a molehill. You're just making it a bigger deal than it has to be. It's not like whatever you're complaining about is stopping people from clearing fights. Until it is.
Yeah.
And then people are like, see, I told you. And like, yes, it just happened to be a 1%, but the percentage change for a lot of the people that are really upset at this, the percentage change wasn't the problem. There were people who were already burned out with the way the combat system works, because the 2-minute burst windows made this particular ultimate feel really hopeless sometimes. If you had a party member that slid outside the 2-minute window and that because they died, and you might as well wipe the whole pull. And previous versions of the combat system would have said, okay, let's think creatively. Let's shift some people's burst windows to the 30-second increment. Let's adjust. Let's make that time back up. And so the system itself has fostered a lot of this burnout going into this tier. And so I think some people's frustration, this is just where they're putting it, but it was already there. We just don't do a very good job talking about it. So I think that's where it happens.
That's a good question. Thank you for that, P. Gerald, because I think it's interesting. And thank you, Cosmos, for joining at the tier 1. Appreciate that. $1 a month club. I really appreciate that support over here on YouTube. We like to try to make it as accessible as possible. So that level is such an important level for us. So thank you in that regards. At its core, we also saw a bunch of first-time chatters over here on Twitch. I love that I can see that. So welcome in Rylax and Noah Smell. And thanks so much for stopping in and saying hi for the first time. So we're glad that you're here. At its core, man, like I'm just kind of curious to see where we obviously go from here, because we're going to see some more adjustments. We'll continue to see more adjustments. But what's also kind of like another thread that just kind of, is just singing in the back of my mind is Yoshi-P looking at Dragoon and Astro, and then realizing, okay, we're going to have to save the things that we're doing for 7.0. And I do wonder if that ends up being like, hey, we're recognizing this too. We're getting that feedback too. But changing, I'm assuming that changing but out of a 2-minute burst window isn't like, oh, let's just, adjust this, because they kind of already got their content schedule plan and all that kind of worked out. So ultimately, if this feedback ends up being something that it's like, okay, we see what we did here and make adjustments, maybe 7.0 is going to be a much more approachable take for a lot of players.
Well, I think this apology tells me that honestly, this seems like it muddies the waters more than it helps. I can tell that they're genuinely stressed about this, and they're trying to decide what to do. The other reason this is a big deal for anybody that hasn't been around the game for a long time is when he says this is kind of unprecedented. It's been a very, very, very long time since they've had to make changes like this, and the last time they had to make changes like this, the balance was substantially more off. So the question why we would bring back something that has not happened since like heaven's word. I think it was March of 2016 was the last time they had to make a balance change while content was relevant. And so when you're talking about something happening 6 years ago, 7 years ago, and you're dusting off this kind of capability, you're dusting off this, break in case of emergency acts, and you're going to take it to this content while people are still mid progression, it feels a little overblown when you're destroying this with an axe, like even if over 1%, like if it really is just 1%, why not just leave it? So there, you say, well, it's just 1%, so get over it. Well, then if it's just 1%, why do it? And so there's this circular argument of like, why did this need to happen in the first place? Because if it was really just 1%, you could have just trusted us to clear it. The counter argument to that is this is the first time we're ever getting Savage Dungeons, and they have said it's going to be item level relevant. So if you need people to have as much best in slot gear as possible by October 18th is my guess date. I guessed it, like that's just a guess. Speculation. October 18th. Mr. Happy guesses the same thing, so two of us will be wrong. And so like that's it. October 18th is our guess at when the half patch will drop. But either way, whenever Criterion Savage gets here, you need as many people getting through as many bosses of weekly lockouts as possible. You don't want 83 groups to clear, so you've got 660 characters with BIS, and everybody else is like, man, I've really been looking forward to the dungeons, and they can't do them. So like, I know there's things that the devs know that we don't know that might have also fueled this decision beyond this letter that they can't disclose to us. When does the ultimate team need to say, hey, balance team, pencils down, we have a job to do? Because in theory, at some point, they need to be testing the ultimate. And if it takes people like Lamatad 120 hours of prog to clear an ultimate, imagine what the testing team has to do to test different mitigations, different comps and all that. They have a hard job. Yeah. So I want to be respectful of that. I just question, would the best thing they could have done been to just do none of this?
Right. I think so. Honestly, that's the conclusion that I come down to, because people were getting clears. If nobody was getting clears, like if it was like, oh, even the upper echelon, because we know that as gear gets rolled out, as these things happen, like that 1% doesn't become a big thing. Now, I do appreciate Yoshi-P's explanation. I always love the insight into how they're thinking and about approaching it. But here's the thing, like they made a change. I think, I don't know if I wouldn't want them to go back and say, all right, guys, okay, 1%. Like, I don't want that kind of ping pong decision-making process. Decision was made. However, in the future, I hope that they take that kind of thing into consideration, especially if people are getting clears. If people aren't getting those clears, that's the thing. And then essentially looking at what else, like ultimately why. And then obviously certain jobs like that kind of violates the principle of bring the job, not the player. Bring the player, not the job, mindset. But that also then hits exactly the feedback we always tell, especially new players, like, hey, congratulations on getting the level cap. Please consider, at least having another job, whether it's in the same role or in another role, just so that if this stuff happens, because it's not always perfect. We see some jobs get favored over the others. That's the process of balance, right? The idea of balance being imperfect, having a perfect balance doesn't exist, but it means that balance is always a constant fluctuation state. Therefore, having a way that you're not starting right over from scratch, having to learn another job, doesn't mean you have to be the master of it, but just maybe have at least another job or two in the holster, so that when you got to switch off Warrior and go to Dark Knight, okay, that's not a problem. I'm still a part of the raid. I'm not like grinding out all this stuff mad while grinding it out, that I can't play the job that I want. But at the end, I wish them luck. I think that I see Chad sounding off about the dungeons, Izzy, saying that they hope the new Criterion variant dungeons, etc., are good. I really need them to be, but beyond needing them to be good, I think it's important that as a community that we've been asking for this kind of content, we should absolutely make sure that we show up for it. So I think the difficulty levels will help ease that into it, but I think it's really going to be important overall. Chris, why don't you wrap up this segment, and then we'll wrap up our show for today.
Cool. Well, after this, guys, we stream 5 days a week on Twitch. As a reminder, at the end of this one, for anybody that's here and is expecting that, I am taking Friday the 23rd through the end of the month off for my first big long vacation, my first vacation since February. So my wife and I can celebrate 10 years of marriage. This is when it worked out with her work schedule to take off. And so we're going to take off that time and hopefully spend some time together. So I know we already have tickets to a comedy show, so we're going to go do that and have a good laugh together. So really excited to have that time off, but that does mean that there won't be stuff over on Twitch. And today I'm going to be working on Sky Steel Tools. So we'll keep at it. Thank you guys so much for being here. Today was awesome. We got 4 topics, I think. So we like
random bonus topic, which was great. So guys, be sure to go hang out over on Twitch. Also, if you guys listen to the MP3 audios, we'd love a rating. Feel free to give us a rating, as it helps the discovery of the podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you for being here. Hopefully you guys enjoy the show. Hopefully we'll see you in the next live show. And until then, take care. All right. Woohoo. Thanks guys so much for hanging out in the live chat. I love highlighting these comments. Also over on Twitch, thank you guys so much for being here. I posted the link to the Twitch here on YouTube if you guys want to go and continue your day with some more live content with Chris. Other than that, dude, like anything else we need to talk about before we end over here on the YouTube side?
No, we didn't even get to, maybe the add-on stuff will still linger next week.
We might have that as a topic for Monday. So we'll try to get a show for Monday as well. And I'll get these things printed out for videos and MP3s and all that stuff. So TGS Watch Party says chat. So that's going on right now. Hopefully we get some really cool announcements. I think we might hear some 16 stuff, but we'll find out. All right, guys, I'm going to end broadcast. It will spin for a minute, so I'll just wave until it decides to end. I never know when it ends.